Question for you. Are you in the market for a new pasta extruder? Perhaps you want to make homemade pasta, fresh pasta at home? Well, today I'm going to be telling you all about my experiences using the Kitchenaid pasta extruder. Konbanwa, Pat Tokuyama here, creator of the Japanese Cooking Club, where I help people learn how to make plant-based Japanese food. Today, I'm going to be telling you all about my experiences using this Kitchenaid pasta extruder set and some of the pros and cons, as well as some of my tips for how to use it. So if you're interested in learning more about this specialized device, stay tuned. So if you've ever had fresh pasta, you may notice that, or you may have noticed that it goes better with certain sauces than others, but again, that may be personal preference, but that is one of my reasons for making my own fresh pasta at home, as opposed to always using the dried kind. And that's exactly one of the reasons why I got this pasta extruder set. As you can see here, this is pretty much all that it comes with, and it doesn't take up too much space. So in terms of what you get in the box, you get this little plastic push thing slash wrench, which you're gonna need because this little bottom piece does get stuck on the bottom, and I'll be telling you more about that in a bit. But in terms of what it comes with, that's essentially it. You're gonna get 6 of these little extruder, I guess molds if you wanna call them that, or shapers. You're gonna get spaghetti, bucatini, which has a little hole in the center, rigatoni as well. So those are the fat pasta tubes. You're gonna also get some large macaroni, and then also fusilli, which is the little spiral shaped pasta. And then this is the bucatini, and then the last one is small macaroni. So the way that you would use it is pretty straightforward. Whenever you decide you want to make a spaghetti, for example, all you're gonna do is put the little end piece in the bottom part, and then you're gonna put this little, I guess a pusher, it looks kind of like a drill, in here, and there's actually like a little cross where this gets set in, and you're just gonna go ahead and put it in here like that. Make sure that it gets set into the cross so you can see that it's all the way in because it's flush with the top. And then you're gonna put the cap on, and then the cap aligns like that with the bottom piece, the cutter, and you're gonna screw it on super tight as possible. You can use the wrench to tighten it, but I usually just use this to take it off. And then all you have to do is attach it to your stand mixer and then put in the dough. So the dough goes in the top part right there, and that's essentially it. If you have a KitchenAid stand mixer and some attachments, it's pretty much the same as any other attachment. You just attach it on there and then put the screw back in so it stays in place. You turn it on and then it'll start to extrude. So basically, when I'm ready to make my pasta or extrude the pasta with the KitchenAid, I'm gonna put the speed all the way to a 10. So this is the Artisan KitchenAid stand mixer, so it doesn't have that much power. I think it's like 350 watts. And because of that, I'm actually upgrading to a bigger stand mixer, which is gonna have 1.3 horsepower. So that's 1 horse and 1/3 of a horsepower. It's gonna be way stronger than this little thing. We'll do a test and compare the results of each of those in a future video, of course. But that's essentially it in terms of using it. So once the pasta comes out, basically, once you get the desired length, so say you wanna get 12 inches of pasta, all you have to do is cut it like that. And this is a pretty firm steel wire, so it's gonna cut it pretty quickly, and then you just leave it and then you let it go out again to however long that you want it, and then you cut it again. But the important thing when you do that is you gotta make sure that it's lined up, because if you don't line it up correctly, you'll find that the steel thread there is gonna block some of the holes where the pasta is supposed to come out, and then it's gonna cause a clump, and then it's gonna get deformed. So you gotta pay attention to that, especially if you're not used to using it. That's one tip that I have for you. So some pros and cons. Let's start with the cons. I really do not like cleaning this because it gets very messy, especially on the bottom part here. The bottom piece actually gets difficult to remove, and I think that's probably why they included this wrench to help you remove it. So there's little grooves here where you can do that, where you can align the wrench notches with the cap. And the issue that I have is that the pasta dough gets stuck. So it gets stuck not only in between the threads here, it makes its way up these threads and on both the cap and then the body itself. And then there's always pasta that's stuck here in the center. So there's like a little hole here, which is what's supposed to align with this little cutter, the extruder. And because of that, pasta always gets in because it's not flush. And then by the time you're done with making the pasta, you'll find that there's always going to be a little bit that's stuck here on this bottom part, and then also here as well, because there isn't, the way that this works is that it's pushing pasta out, and then by the time there isn't enough pasta, there's nothing to push that last bit of pasta out, and so you're always going to waste pasta. So that's kind of annoying. So I guess that was the first con. That was a little long-winded, but that was the first con, is that it's difficult to clean. The second con is that it is wasteful, because you're always going to be wasting probably about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of pasta dough, because it doesn't get pushed out because there's nothing to push it out. The third thing is that it's all made of plastic mostly, including the cutting pieces. Yes, the frame is made of stainless steel, but the actual pieces that are cutting the pasta and shaping it are made of plastic. Ideally, these would be extruded using bronze dies, because as you may know, bronze dies tend to give pasta an irregular surface, which helps to deliver more flavor and more sauce to your mouth with each bite. So that's one of the reasons why you would want bronze dies, but I don't know why Kitchenaid didn't do that. I think that would be nice to have a bronze die extruder set. Maybe that's something that they can consider in a future update for this. So the fourth con is that this thing gets really noisy. So like I said, the Artisan is only about 350 watts in terms of power, and you can really hear the motor straining when it's extruding the pasta. So like I mentioned, when you have this thing attached here, and you're putting the dough in here on the top, you're going to push it down, and if you have the same model as this one, you may notice that it's going to start to strain and it's going to slow down. So you know how this little thing will start to turn. Whoa. Didn't mean to do that. So when you turn this on, you can see that it's going at a regular pace. So when I have it at full speed at 10, it's going wah, 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 wah. But then when you start to push the dough in, it's going to go wah, 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 wah. So it's going to slow down because it's not strong enough to handle the extrusion, or it's not strong enough to force the pasta through these little holes. So if you have a stronger stand mixer, like I mentioned, the one that I'm getting, the Pro line, that may not be an issue for you. So that's another con. And then the fifth, which was really surprising to me, because I actually thought that the extruder would be simpler, more easy to use, less fussy than the actual cutting set. So I also had the cutting set, which I'll be reviewing in another video. So the Kitchenaid pasta roller and cutting set, which you can use to make fettuccine as well as spaghetti and flat pasta like lasagna. So that one's actually, in my opinion, a little bit easier to use. This thing, I didn't realize it, but you have to stand here and watch it. You have to keep feeding it for one thing, and then you have to keep cutting it as well. So the pasta roller cutting set does the cutting for you, so it's a little bit less work in my opinion, and you don't have to keep feeding it little balls, little dough balls, which is what they recommend. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now that we got the cons out of the way, let's talk about some of the pros. So one is that it's pretty simple to use. Like I mentioned, all you got to do is attach it, you got to put the dough in, and out will come your pasta. So it doesn't get any easier than that. The second thing is that it does include a lot of different shapes of pastas. So if you're into experimenting with different shapes or trying different shapes and enjoying them, this will give you some of that freedom to do so. This being a Kitchenaid attachment, it does work with any Kitchenaid stand mixer that has the little front thing, the little hole where you can attach things to. So that's a plus right there. So the fourth pro that I think you might want to think about is that it helps you make fresh pasta. So if you didn't have one of these attachments sets, what you'd have to do is you'd have to probably either do it manually using one of those crank machines where you have to crank the pasta out by hand, which would take you much longer. I don't think there is a manual extruder, at least that I've seen, so that would be your only option, I guess. So the fifth pro, my last pro, is that it doesn't take up too much space. So as you can see, this is pretty much all that it comes with. There was a cap for this thing, so I don't know where I put it, but this thing doesn't take up too much space. This is essentially it, and it works. I guess that would be the sixth pro. It works. So if you've been waiting patiently for some of my tips for using this particular pasta extruder set, here are 5 of them to help you get started. So the first is going to be to, 1, use the recipes that the book or that it came with. When you get this little attachment set, it's going to come with a little manual, and then in that manual there's going to be recipes. So use those recipes first so that you get a feel of the kind of dough, the texture and the consistency, the feel of it for the particular extruder set. And after that, then I would recommend, so tip number 2 is to try to experiment with not only different types of flour, but different ingredients like vegetables or even herbs. So I like to put tomato and spinach, for example, into my pasta, as well as basil or even shiso. And you can try different combinations of flours as well. I got a grain mill earlier this year to help me with my home-baked breads and also my fresh homemade pasta. And with that, if you have your different types of flours, that can give you different types of flavors, different textures and consistencies that you can also experiment with. So that'll keep you pretty busy and excited to play with this as well. So that's another tip. And then the third tip, like I mentioned previously, is that when you're putting dough in here, you want to use very small balls so that it fits into the hole. And then you also want to push it down so that the machine or the stand mixer is pushing out as much as possible. So you may notice that it starts to speed up when it's not feeding or it's not extruding, and that's when you know that you need to push it down more. And then the fourth tip that I had for you is to make sure that you use a lot of flour so that the pasta, once it's cut and extruded, it doesn't stick to each other, or the pieces don't stick to each other. On top of that, if you're not going to be using flour, which I don't know why you wouldn't, because you should be using flour, you should get some sort of a pasta drying rack. So this is the Kitchenaid drying rack, and it opens up like that, and so you can especially for the long pasta like the spaghetti or the bucatini, you can hang it on here to dry, especially while you're doing another batch of pasta, for example, or if you want to save it for later on. So definitely recommend getting one of these or some of the other products that are available, but this is the one that I use and I like it. I think it works very well. It's very functional, and it has enough space for about 3 pounds of pasta. And then the fifth tip, like I mentioned, is to make sure that you're using high speed on the mixer, so a 10 on this Artisan model. I'm not sure how fast I'm gonna have to do it on the Pro line when I get it, but I'll let you know when I play with it. Make sure that when you do cut your pasta that you have the little wire aligned properly. So I'll show you how it looks right now, how it's supposed to look. So you can see here how it's supposed to cut. If you don't have this aligned, for example, if it's not like this, if you have it a little bit over there like that, it's going to be blocking the hole and it's going to deform your pasta. So keep that in mind. All right, so I think that's going to be it for today's product review for the Kitchenaid pasta extruder set. Anything that I forgot to say, I'll make sure to put in the description below. I'll also link to the product if you want to check it out. And then also stay tuned for my other reviews for the mock mill, the grain mill that I mentioned just now, where I mill my own grains to make homemade flour, as well as the pasta roller set, and then my future comparison for the Artisan versus the Kitchenaid Pro Line 7-quart stand mixer, which we will hopefully see an improvement, not only in the noise, but also the output. So stay tuned. Oh yeah, question of the day. Have you ever made fresh pasta before? Or if you haven't made it yet, maybe have you tasted fresh pasta and you know exactly how awesome and delicious it can be? Let me know in the comments below right now, and what kind of pasta sauce you had that experience with, or what kind of pasta sauce you would be interested in trying your freshly homemade pasta with. Okay guys, so that's gonna be it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below. Subscribe if you wanna see more videos like this one, and especially with regard to plant-based Japanese cooking. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I guess I'll see you guys in my next video. Kyotsukete ne. Take care. Bye bye. Which you can use to make fettuccine. Having trouble speaking there.